and welcome to Conversations with Matt DeLockery. Today we're going to talk about adopting a child. Here to share with us is Jen Willis. Jen is a Christian, wife, mom to three, and small business owner who has a first-hand perspective on this issue. She has suffered through miscarriage and gone through the adoption process with a special needs older child. So Jen, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to talk to you about what it's like adopting a child, but before we do that, would you mind sharing some of your story leading up to that point?
Sure, would love to. I first of all just want to say if for any listeners out there, this has been such a great process. If you've never kind of reflected and looked back to get your story together, it's just I'm overwhelmed by God's grace in my life and just how He passionately pursues us and as people. And your story is such a great way to go back and look at that. So thanks again for inviting me on. And yeah, we, if you had asked us as a newly married couple if we were going to adopt a child, the answer would have definitely been no. We met in college. Both of us had come from very good families, grown up in Christian homes. No real experience with adoption, none on my side of the family or my husband's. And so we met in college, like the third day of school, so very early in college, and dated all throughout school, had some great mentors, and we were married at 21 and kind of knew that we had always wanted to start a family early. And at 23, I was pregnant with our son. So we had a great pregnancy with him. His name's David, and so excited to have a baby. We were the first out of most of our friends to have children. So, just kind of blindly ignorant to being parents and how much our life was going to change. And he was an awesome baby, a full term, and had a great pregnancy with him. And I was just kind of like, man, this is easy. Like, just have a baby. And so shortly after David, we had just kind of decided, okay, we're just going to have all our kids fast as we can. Let's just do this, get it over with. And so I was pregnant again when David was 9 months old, and it did not go well. I had a great first appointment. By this time, your second time around, you kind of are more at ease because you know what to expect. So I had a great first ultrasound, and then went back in around 12 weeks, and tons of doctors swarming in and out of my room, and didn't really know what was going on. And basically I had another doctor, they were waiting on my actual doctor to come in there, and she came in and was just, I remember seeing the ultrasound screen, and something didn't seem, everyone was very concerned about it. And, they started writing like no fetal heartbeat on there. And it was very surreal. Again, I was very young, still a new mom. My son was not even a year old. And I remember just being a blur of things, from them rushing me to another room, telling me that, I had surgery the next morning. They were going to be doing a DNC. And then finding out that this was actually a really rare miscarriage, where I had miscarried twins, but it was a partial molar miscarriage, which was like cancerous tissue that had grown. And so they wanted me to, after surgery, come in weekly and get blood drawn to make sure nothing was growing, in my system. So it was honestly really traumatic. I mean, I definitely was like, I don't even know if we're going to have more kids. Like, this is crazy. So anyway, 6 months went by. That's kind of how long I had to be monitored closely. And, I'd been obviously seeing a counselor and trying to kind of come to grips with, what we were going to do as far as our family was concerned. And we decided to try again. And at that 6 month mark, I was pregnant with my daughter, actually, Mackenzie. So that was kind of a really special pregnancy. It was also another really difficult one. From the beginning, they had told us that we were due on Christmas Day. So I always thought that was, really special. And she actually had a twin early on, and this twin was fraternal this time. So that twin did not make it, but Mackenzie did. And she, the whole pregnancy was honestly just kind of rough. It went from being pregnant with one child and miscarrying the other one at the same time. So, again, not not a great follow-up from the one before, but Mackenzie, again, is, if you know her, met her, she is a awesome little girl with tons of energy and life in her, and so we're super thankful for that. At that point, we definitely we had always kind of wanted 3 children. I don't know, just, you decide a number that you would like, and that's kind of where I was. And so to follow that, we had 3 more miscarriages after that. And they were all different. There is no, sometimes they're able to find like a reason or a common thread or something that medically that keeps happening. And mine were all like just very different. So there was, I didn't have answers, I didn't have reasons. I do know in our personal life at the time, Mackenzie was born in 2008, which was the start of the housing crash, and Tim had lost his job, and the company had filed bankruptcy. So we were undergoing a lot of stress at home. At this point I was, again, we were still really young, and we had 2 little kids at this point, and he was trying to find a career, trying to find a job, something to do. And we just really had to start over, and which was weird to say at 25, but he had to find another industry. He had a college degree, and he had this great construction sales job, and we kind of called the next few years like our, it's funny how you can joke about things 10 years later, but we kind of refer to it as like the job death spiral, because he just went to a lot of jobs that were not a good fit. And I saw it happening. I mean, you don't want the person you love to be miserable. It was really difficult for me. I grew up in a family where my dad worked the same job his entire life. People did not change jobs. Like, now it's super common. I feel like we were maybe on the beginning trend of that, where it was like not trendy yet to change your job all the time. So, that was really hard to kind of watch that all unravel. I also saw with my dad, though, like that I loved the stability and what that brought for our family, but I knew that he had always wanted to do something else. And so I had always told myself, like, when my husband wants to do it, like, I'm going to just push him and be like, you need to do this. Like, how can I help you? Like, let's make it happen. And so that was kind of my mentality. People ask me that a lot. Like, were you on board with all this? And for me, I was just like, we weren't going to stay somewhere where everybody was miserable, So we legitimately started over. We sold everything we had. We moved in with Tim's family, and he went back, and the best advice anyone gave him was go get a trade, go get something that matters, that you know how to do it. And he went back to school, and I remember like taking the kids and ordering like a $5 Little Caesar pizza and going to the student center at Chattahoochee Tech, and him coming out from HVAC school, and we were having family dinner out in the lobby, because that's where we were. And we were renovating this house that was the only house we could afford at the time to live in. It was a family property that we bought, and I had actually started my own house cleaning business. And I, when the kids were sleeping, even at night, which now I'm like, it's probably the most unsafe thing that I could have done. But I had 13 clients a month. I was cleaning houses weekly. And I mean, we were doing literally whatever we could do to kind of get back on our feet. And so all that to say, hindsight, probably growing our family at the time was not the most wise thing we should have been focusing on. But, it's just kind of how things were. It's the only thing that we knew. And we were like, we're going to make it through this. So after the final miscarriage that we had, we kind of just decided to take a break. We were just going to be done. And if like the Lord had 2 kids for us, they were healthy and awesome. And we would just kind of like, this is what he has for us, And about that time is when things really started to kind of turn around for us. And we found, we moved out of that home that we renovated and found another house that was kind of closer to the community and school we wanted to be a part of. And Tim got on, he finished school, he got a great job. And that's when I kind of started getting into events through a family member. I had a connection there. And I don't know, it was just kind of like the mark of turning around a little bit. I remember kind of feeling like the storms were kind of subsiding. You can tell that sometimes in your life when you feel like things were beginning to turn around. And, that period, though, I think really prepared me for the next chapter we were about to enter. I remember sitting in such a place of darkness, and just feeling like the most sad I had ever felt, just from kind of watching my husband like go through what he went through, us losing kids and just being so physically exhausted from doing everything. The awesome comic relief part in all this was that I had my 10-year high school reunion in the middle of all of it. And I really didn't want to go because we were, jobless and homeless and, I had all this stuff going on. But I was in the best shape I had ever been in my life because we were renovating a house and I was cleaning all these houses. So I was like, I'm going to go buy the best dress I can find and I am going to this high school reunion. So I remember that kind of being a funny time when we showed up, and it didn't matter. That's like your worst fear, right? Is to go to your reunion and not have this like amazing job and whatever. So we kind of embraced it at that period. But all that to say, I mean, the verse that I even had for that season, I really felt like God kind of spoke to me later was my best friend at the time since high school was kind of going through some stuff in her personal life too. And I remember she sent it to me, and it's in Micah, and it says, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. And though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." And it was through that time when I think my heart for people that were struggling like really began. And I saw that even in the church, it's very hard for people to feel like they could connect and reach out to people that were struggling, like with maybe the depth of the struggles that we had. And feel like God just sat with me, and he was really patient and like really loving, and I felt his presence. And later that kind of comes full story with, the child we ended up adopting, and even kind of my heart for people now. I'm very drawn to the people that are sitting in a lot of stuff, that need somebody just to sit with them and love them. And I've just seen it firsthand in my own story that like God redeems that, and he pulls people out of that all the time. And it's really awesome. And for me in my own life, like he definitely pulled me out of that. So.
As you said, that period in your life sort of led you or prepared you for adopting a child. Could you explain how that happened? How you led to adopt Zach?
Yes. So we got settled in our new home here, new community, and Tim and his new job. Kind of found myself in a new job, and we just started casually talking about adoption. At this point, I kind of felt like we were done having biological kids. I think the emotional and physical toll it took on me was just, miscarriage is difficult because it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. And I really saw everyone that I loved, physically, visually, emotionally upset when they had to watch me go through that. I had a really vivid memory of my dad standing in my kitchen one day and being like, "It's okay to be done. Like you can be done," and just like the freedom kind of I felt in that, and knowing that like I didn't have to have another kid, and we wanted our family to grow. So we just started praying about adoption. At this point, our kids were 5 and 7. So they were getting a little older. They were both in, starting school. And we were really open to the idea of adopting maybe an older child and not bringing in a newborn, with both of them kind of in school. So there's a website through Georgia. It's actually called Free Children of Georgia. And what that means is they're legally free to adopt, that their parental rights have been terminated. And so I, definitely had some fears going in that we were going to find this child we loved and bring them in, and then they were going to get like ripped out of our home. We were going to foster them. And so I was trying really hard. I was like, God, if you could just please spare me, like, if we could just adopt a child that's, like, ready to live in our home. Like, I don't know, like, what I'll do if, this does not work out. And so we actually saw Zach. He was on the news. It was Wednesday's Child. They air, children from that website that are legally free to adopt. They air their stories. And I remember his photo online. He looked just like David, and they were 6 weeks apart. They were like these 7-year-old little blonde-headed boys with glasses. And, I did a double take when I looked on the website for the first time. And, there's hundreds of kids on there, which is really sad at any given point. And so I just remember being like, submit, and like showing Tim, like, hey, look at this kid I found, and he's, of course, I don't even know at the time if he's probably just like, yeah, it sounds awesome. And so we actually got a call back, and in the meantime we were getting calls about random situations that we knew like were not a good fit for us. And I was worried about that, like how do you tell someone no,
Right.
like how do you know which child that when you don't want to play God, and be like, well, there was a lot of anxiety around that with me that I wanted to know. But we did know every situation. There would be one, and there was one little girl who her parents had been killed in a car wreck, and she was 2, and she had like a spinal cord injury and needed several trips a day down to like in like a handicap accessible home. And so there were some where I just knew like, okay, we're not equipped for this. We can't handle this. And so anyway, we got a call back. I was actually on an event and ironically in Las Vegas, doing an annual meeting for this company. And I got the phone call that said, we've matched your application for him. Like, you are a match. And which at that point means like DFAX is, green lights for you. Like, if you want to come meet this child and move forward, like they've matched you with them. So I remember being like so excited, so excited something was working out, so excited that, they picked us. And I remember having to call Tim, and we weren't together, and tell him like, hey, do you remember Zach? Do you remember that picture? And, we like had to make sure we were talking about the same kid. I'm like, we just matched with him. Like, we have to go meet him when I get home next week. And it's just surreal, and as it got closer, I mean, just being like, that you get like a paragraph about them, and I kind of had I started getting some warning signs before we went there. The more questions I got, the more runaround I got. I was not getting straightforward answers. I'm like, okay, well, where does the foster family live? Like, how far away is he? And everything was weird. So we finally got information. We got an address, and we went and met him. And he was in a state-run group home. There was no foster family. And it was honestly like one of the weirdest places I've ever been to in my life. Really disturbing. That's all I can say. It's, a lady had kind of, I think a long time ago, maybe she was doing a really good thing and taking in some kids that, had some medical issues that really needed help and nobody wanted. But when I stood there and it's like 2013 and there's therapeutic foster homes and there's resources and somebody's got, 7 kids living in a hallway of a house with, a rotation of volunteers that are bound to their cribs and medical devices. And like, these kids hadn't been outside. And like, it just was like, I felt like I was on a movie set, honestly, at first. So after getting over the initial, like, this is his situation. I didn't really even have any more questions after that. I knew that he was severely, I would use the word neglect. Like, he had just been neglected of having a lot of things, a lot of life experience, a lot of things done for him. So I no longer had questions about, like, was he going to get better or what's wrong with him? I mean, you could look at his environment and be like, this is what's wrong with him, like where he is right now. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, at that point, we decided to move forward. Crazy enough. I feel like anybody in my shoes at that time, had they been standing there with me, like in that environment, you would be like, we have to get this kid out, like this is, we may not be equipped for this and we may not know what we're doing and, but we're here and we've matched with him and like, this just is not okay, and, so I don't know if that's a good motivator, but that's kind of like where we were. Like I would have never been able to like live with myself had I left that place and been like, nope, and walked out. I mean, there's no way I could have done it. So.
Okay. So now that you've adopted him, what was it like then? I mean, it can't be just all perfect. Everything's easy now.
No. In fact, that's probably the hardest because, you heard me talk about the season we had come out of and nothing could have really prepared me for what we were about to enter. He is a very unique kid. He's a really sweet kid, but I mean, the issues that he had, never living in a family. I mean, I tell people a lot of times it was like adopting a child from another country and like just dropping them in the middle of like Marietta, Georgia, like here, go to school, just be a normal kid. And he was not ready for that at all. I mean, everything was overwhelming. Like when you think about if you've never been to a restaurant, if you've never been inside a grocery store, if you don't know that people live in homes and have mailboxes and, that cars will run over you. I mean, just anything, like if a person's been literally in a bubble, which is what it felt like he was in, he just had no life experience about anything at 7, So we kind of had to start over with him, like as if he were a newborn in a lot of ways, except he had to enter kindergarten, So we literally overnight, like plopped him in kindergarten with my other 2 and just kind of started treating him and having expectations that he would be, I hate to use the word normal and we do a lot, but there's certain things within society where like you have to be able to do like what kids your age are doing, And so that was really difficult, but like I knew if no one else pushed him, like I was going to be the only one that would do it. Like nobody else was going to care as much about this kid that I did. And so the harder I pushed him, then the more quickly like he could catch up and have a chance, at kind of, being like his peers. And he did. I saw quickly that he was really smart, even though we lacked communication early on. I mean, he had what was called echolalia, where he would just repeat what you would say to him, like since there had not really been like conversation going on. Every food was new to him. He tells me now that he ate peanut butter and jelly, pretty much for every meal. One time we were in the grocery store and I lost him on the frozen food aisle and he was standing in front of a freezer case and like glued to it, and I was, just like, Zach, what do you see in there? Like, do you want something in there? And he's shaking his head no. And I was like, what is that? And then he had just like pointed to it and said dinner. He was pointing to like a, frozen TV dinner. And so random things would trigger him. Like I was trying to it was like a puzzle. I was trying to put together whatever information I could about him and figure out like what his exposure had been. When a child can't communicate and there's been a 7-year gap, you're just kind of winging it, honestly. So we didn't go a lot of places for 6 months. We were like in crisis mode of trying to be like, this is a toothbrush and it's not going to hurt you. And everyone brushes their teeth, and we made a lot of really big mistakes. I think one of the first weekends we were like, let's go to La Paria. And now like knowing what I know about kids with sensory issues, I mean, it was like a train wreck. He, freaked out. I remember he started like screaming and hitting Tim and like throwing his food. And we were like, what's going on? Like our kids love La Paria, and so just hindsight of us, having no idea what we were doing and just trying to make it work somehow, again, by, God's overwhelming grace, he ended up getting better and recovering. And, when you're with something 24/7, it's hard to see that. But now it's really easy for me to look back and see where he was and where he is now in the slow steps that it's taken him. It's like watching grass grow, and it can be really frustrating. But it's been really cool, to be honestly an experience for us to watch him change and kind of develop a personality and become a normal kid.
So fast forward to today. Where are things now?
Man, so we are in 4th grade with him. My kids are 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We had a lot of issues early on with the school situation. We landed in a school that was not equipped really to handle him at all, nor really equipped to handle any kid with special needs. And that's been like a really big, awesome, transformational thing, honestly. It was really difficult. I kind of made the decision early on that I was going to fight for him no matter what. Like, no matter what it costs, like I was going to do whatever I had to do for him. And so when we got pushed back from the school, one of the people that's no longer there had said, like, he can't come to school here. We don't have any kids like him here. And I just remember being like, okay, well, what do you want me to do with him? Like, I'm not gonna homeschool him, and I didn't get it. I didn't get like you can't tell people that, you can't tell kids they can't go to school somewhere. So we, went down this whole road of getting, it turned out we got the state involved. It was Zach versus like an entire city. And turns out the state's really in favor of schools having the resources to educate kids. So honestly, school's now like a huge highlight for him. I think he'll look back and love like where he is right now. It changed everything. I never had expected anyone to just, quote unquote, deal with him. I just was trying to get resources brought in to help him and other kids that came through, and that's totally happened, which is amazing. And there's so many people now on board with it. Again, Zach's a cool kid because you set a bar and he hits it, and it's a rewarding thing to invest in. And I can imagine as a teacher, because you can legitimately see you're making a difference in someone's life. So he's a great student. He's catching up tremendously. He still has holes in his learning that we try and navigate and figure out. But yeah, I mean, he's people have called him a rule follower now. People have talked about how funny he is and how kind he is to other kids. And while he's definitely a normal little boy that's 11 and about to enter, middle school soon and have some changes going on that we really struggle with. It's kind of good to see that. Even, right now even with our other two, we're working on how do we respond to mom and dad? Like, this is how we talk to each other. And I laugh because, it's when we adopted him, people said like, he will never have a self-generated thought. Like, he will never have the ability to really love people. And I'm like, oh, he has plenty of self-generated thoughts. Like, he, is getting in trouble right now because all his self-generated thoughts. And so that is one. I want to go like find that person and be like, why don't you just come over for a few hours and come look at this kid that you spoke that over? Because he, what's the negative thing is because he was so independent for so long, that streak is pretty deep in him. We're like, he doesn't, he's going to take care of himself. And so, we definitely have like rough days, but they are not how they used to be. And I think that's the thing is you kind of have to just take things season by season. And like when we brought him in, we knew it was going to be hard. And honestly, I think this whole season of raising kids is just hard. And kind of keep that in perspective of what you're doing long term. And if you can like keep that perspective that like this is like you've been stewarded these kids, like I really do see kids as a gift now because of how our kids came to us, and the kids that we didn't have, the 5 that did not work out. It's like God thought that you would be the best parents to this kid, and so this is how long you have them for. Do the best you can. And we say we're sorry a lot around here because we, we're all a very high-spirited, high-opinionated home, and that's tough. But I'm just grateful that we're kind of all doing this together, and that again we're in a community where people are kind of doing it alongside with us too.
So, what's it been like integrating him into your family?
Yeah. Well, the good news is David and Mackenzie have never asked that he would go back. So I always said that at the end of the day, if that's what I can hang my hat on, I don't think they're going to say it now because it's been too long, but that means that they accepted him, you know. It's funny because he came in like in the middle of them, but they both took it on as like to be their older, like to his older sibling. So they definitely view him as like their little brother. And they've, you know, we got really, again, like, there's so many things that, like, why he was supposed to be in our family. But David and Mackenzie, I mean, they love Zach. Like, they love him. And they have been single-handedly one of the most, like, I mean, just the best thing that could have happened for him. I think about if Zach had been placed in a family with no, you know, that didn't have any children, their ability to come, we like to call Mackenzie socially aggressive, where, you know, she's going to get in his face and like, you know, you will talk to me, you will play with me. And then David, who like wrestles him and is such a boy, you know, and like just gets in his face too. And him having siblings, he's definitely integrated in like a completely normal sibling. Like they all pick at each other, annoy each other. And so he definitely is getting the full sibling experience, I would say here. You know, as far as like just trying to parent him, I mean, we have to regroup on, you know, a weekly, if not daily basis sometimes. I mean, we are always trying to love him well and discipline him well. And we, you know, we are not have good days, and we are not perfect, and we yell and, you know, do things that we're not, you know, supposed to do, say things we're not supposed to say, all of that. But, I feel like, again, he's kind of being treated as if he's in a normal family, you know, with parents that love him and parents that are hard on him, but parents that are also like trying to give him like a complete childhood back, you know. And I feel like Zach kind of kickstarted our family to really be intentional with our time. We started he loves being outside, and we really take as much time as we can to get away, like take the kids kayaking. They all love that, and go camping. And I definitely feel like he made us kind of like, you know, do the things we said we wanted to do. Like, let's go all get the kids together and do this. Let's make some memories. And we just became more intentional about it because he didn't have any. And he was really good for our family in that way, where we had to, you know, we've always had all these other things going on in our life with renovating houses and pursuing other dreams. And Zach kind of brought us back into like, but right now, this is the most important thing. Like right now, these 3 little people that are in our house, we need to put all of our energy here first, you know, like in our marriage and in our kids. And then anything after that is great. And, so I think that's, you know, he kind of was the reason too, we launched our own company. I mean, we loved, the experiences we were having. We loved traveling together. And, you know, when Tim had been in his industry, you know, he got his, HVAC license. That ended up being his trade. He did it for 7 years, and then he went and took the state test and started his own company. Like literally on a Friday he quit, and on a Monday we activated a phone and we're like, okay, hopefully people call. But the kind of, honestly, the heart behind that was that we wanted to be able to, you know, go to Nicaragua for a week and take our kids there and, you know, pack up when we wanted to. And he wanted to be home in the mornings. I mean, oh my gosh, I needed so much help in the mornings, like trying to get all 3 of them out the door. And so it really was, it spurred on a lot of changes quicker and made us more intentional than we probably would have been having a child that needed what he, you know, he had such significant needs that it kind of made us completely regroup what we were doing.
So if somebody who listens to this is thinking about adopting
if they're still thinking about adopting.
They're still thinking about it. Well, I mean, you told us about a situation where you got a child that came out of a very rough situation. It wasn't just an easy transition into bringing him into your family, and yet it's turned out very well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that's hopeful for a lot of people. It'll give them encouragement. So, if they're thinking about it still, with all of the work that it obviously requires, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them? What do they need to know?
It is hopeful. I do think that. I think I tell people there's no way your situation is going to be like mine. And with what we went through, like, you're going to be fine. Like, and I can point you to a lot of families that adopted children where it was a lot more of a smooth transition. You know, gosh, it's like what people tell you when you get married or when you even have a baby. It's so similar. It's like you can't prep people for it that much. But I will say, community is such a thread through our story. We've been so blessed. We've had friendships come and go and move in and out of our life at the perfect seasons where we have always done it with other people. Like, and we've always been completely authentic. You know, we don't, our friends that we have, like, we don't try and mask something in front of them that we're not. I mean, people know if we're in a fight, they know if we're having a bad day. You know, I parent Zach like I parent him with or without friends here. And I just think that's so important to get to a place to where you have people that you can call and be like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. You know, like, I need you to come over. I need you to take him. I mean, I would have friends come pick him up for an afternoon. And I think when you go through something alone, it's just really sad, and there's not much hope, and you don't really have anyone but your own mind to tell you, like, you know, to try and pull you out of it. And when you have other people that can speak life into you and that can encourage you, and that you can also look and see, okay, well, these people have biological kids that have zero issues and they're having just as hard of a time. You know, there's just something about living life in community that we were made to do. And that's really, like, one of the most important things to us is, like, opening our home, having people in here, but being intentional about it. Like, you know, I always jump into the deep end quick, like, with people, because there's not a lot of time for small talk. And, you know, like, what's really going on with your friends? Like, do you know? Like, do you care? And how can you help them? Like, how can you show vulnerability and so that they will too?
Thank you for sharing with us about your experiences with the adoption process. Before you go, I want to ask one last thing. Are there any resources that have helped you that you can point people to? So if somebody's thinking about taking the next step, somewhere they can find more information about, you know, making the right decision or what's going to be involved and so forth, how to actually go to the next step?
Absolutely. There's, I would recommend finding an agency to work with if you go through DFACS. We use Lutheran Services of Georgia. There's many. DFACS can be a very difficult. Zach had 5 caseworkers in DFACS over a very short period of time. So if you are not, like, if you have not been working with DFACS, if you don't know how they kind of operate, I would recommend having an agency. Again, these agencies do not cost money, but they will work alongside with you and kind of be the buffer. I recommend that. We happened to be in a church where there was tons of families that had adopted. So if you don't know people, I would find people. I know there's adoption support groups that you can, again, ask these agencies of, or a lot of churches have organizations and groups set up like that. But we, oddly enough, when we moved on the street, there was a family 3 doors down, again, another family that God had here for a season, and they had adopted a sibling set of 3 with the same caseworker that we used to adopt Zach. So, you know, that's crazy now that I look back and see the, you know, timing of that. And so, yeah, and then there's tons of books. There's a lot of stuff on trust-based relationships. These kids have literally had, you know, the whole rage right now is Stranger Things. You know, I've never watched the movie Nell. I haven't been able to bring myself to do it yet, but kids that suffer trauma early on, it's actually a diagnosis they're trying to get more out there and more information about, but it's early childhood trauma, and it changes the brain. Like, it changes the way these kids develop, and it slows things down. And they can recover, though. But there's a lot of odd behavior and a lot of things that can be explained through studying that. So I think really trying to understand, like, the trauma that happens in adoption that is traumatic for children and how their brains have kind of been changed. And then, you know, there's tons of resources out there and books, great books on the healing process of that and how you can respond and kind of definitely paints a bright future for them where the kid that you're adopting is not really the kid you're adopting. And I would say that too. So.
Excellent. So if you're thinking about adopting, take a look at some of those resources that Jen has suggested, some of the ideas for how you can get involved in community, how you can find someone to work along with you and be a buffer between you and DFACS, and find out everything that you need to know about what makes your kid unique and how to help him or her in the best way that they can. So if adoption is something you're considering, check out those resources, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to hear more interesting content like this. Thanks, Jen, for coming on, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Matt.